Hi friends, my name is Emily, welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to quickly update you on what I read in the last 2 days of March. I anticipated not really being able to finish much, but then found myself with some time. So the first book that I read was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Now you may have seen the video where I talked about this book with my podcast co-host Bailey. I read this for the podcast. I read it specifically with the intention of talking about this book with someone. So much of my interest in the book was focused around the questions that I was interested in discussing, music specifically because our podcast is looking at literature and music. I had a really fun time reading this book. So the clip of the video that ended up on my YouTube channel was like a reduced clip. I believe the full video is like 45 minutes, and at some point in the future we plan on releasing that to our patrons. The things that we sort of touched on as a teaser for that, if you're interested in becoming a patron and having access to that video in the future, we talked a lot about education, the ways in which education systems frequently fail young people. Bailey talked a lot about relationships of trust between herself and her students and how she teaches to ensure that people succeed and to ensure that people take away something from the arts. Like, it's less about the grade and more about the experience of engaging with the arts. And I talked a little bit about critical thinking in that video. If you are interested in the full discussion, you will have to head on over to the Wild Sounds Civilized Patreon page. Follow us there, because we do plan on releasing that content to our patrons at some point in the future. All in all, I did enjoy the experience of essentially buddy reading this book and getting to have a really in-depth conversation with someone about On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. So, also in the very last week of March, there was a staff appreciation event. I'm an Indigo employee, so I already get a discount on books, but during the staff appreciation events, our discount is increased. And so I decided to pick myself up The Heart and the Bottle by Oliver Jeffers. So Oliver Jeffers is one of my favorite children's book authors. He is a classically trained artist. His works are very smart, and even though they're for children, there is a lot going on in them. I love the sort of mixed media that he has going on. I decided to pick up a new Oliver Jeffers rather than one that I'd already read, but I do really want to own at some point This Is My Moose, I think is what it's called, because that is particularly layered and well thought out. But so I'm slowly working on collecting all of Oliver Jeffers' works. This is about a little girl who puts her heart in a bottle after her grandfather dies. She takes it out of her body and she puts it in this bottle to keep it safe because she doesn't want to have it broken again. She doesn't want to feel all these feels. It's very simple, very child appropriate, but also as an adult reading this, very relatable. It's an interesting look at grief and what can be tempting to do with grief, which is bottle it up. So yeah, I really enjoyed The Heart and the Bottle. I would recommend that you check out Oliver Jeffers. The next book that I read is sort of finishing up from March, in which I endeavored to read books by women, and that is Bygone Badass Broads, 52 Forgotten Women Who Changed the World by Mackenzie Lee. So this was absolutely fascinating. I had so much fun learning about so many different women throughout history. I have a whole bunch of tabbies because the reason it took me so long to get through this was every time I found a really interesting woman, I would go and start researching her, and so it was taking me forever to read the book. And so I'm gonna slowly go back and research. And one of the humans in here that I found particularly interesting is Ursula Nordstrom, rad lesbian publisher who drastically changed the face of children's publishing. So she had a hand in publishing Goodnight Moon, Runaway Bunny, Julie of the Wolves. Fun fact with this woman came to her with a pitch and she was like, so a girl raised by wolves? Question mark? And Ursula Nordstrom was like, is it gonna be well researched and authentic? And Jean Craighead George was like, yep, it's gonna be well researched and authentic. And Ursula Nordstrom wrote her a check and was like, here, make the thing. Harriet the Spy, she also had a hand in publishing. Charlotte's Web, also Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Are, and The Midnight Kitchen. Learning about this really rad human from Bygone Badass Broads is fantastic, and so I do hope to, during VEDA, do a little, I have 3 videos planned to talk about Ursula Nordstrom, which depending on how the research goes might just become 2 videos, but we'll see. The last book I read is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge. This is a book that I put on my Black History Month TBR in February, and I continue reading throughout. So this is looking at race relations in the UK, specifically because of Britain's colonial history. Because I live in Canada, which is a former British colony, I feel like a lot of these discussions had in Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race are relevant to me as well. Like, the slave trade is a thing that just impacted any colonialist colony, any colonialist country. This book was interrogating that narrative and being like, hey, slavery just didn't exist in America. It existed everywhere, and it was equally shitty everywhere it existed. And it looks at the long-term impacts of slavery, the ways in which a society that is built around valuing Black bodies in a certain way, really hard time erasing that from its structures. Like, it's a thing that we actively have to work for. It was a really fascinating read. Those are the 4 books that I read at the end of March. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? Do you enjoy any of these books? We also have to say thank you to my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this and longer form content possible. Thank you for your encouragement and your support throughout the month of VEDA. I really appreciate your messages and your comments. If you're interested in becoming a patron, links to that will be in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.